Okay, so let's just look at a quick grip break from this armbar control position and go through the braking mechanics and using the pointing our thumb down towards, or pointing our opponent's thumb down towards their feet to finish the armbar. When using grip breaks, I'm a big advocate of never using this top leg to break the grips. As we talked about when it comes to the control, this leg is the leg that is controlling Kevin's posture right now and his ability to sit up. I want it always breaking his posture. If I say did something like having the top arm weave through like spider web, and I bring this top leg over for say the chamber lock, which is something that I loved when I was a lower level in jiu-jitsu. The problem with this is that Kevin's posture is untouched right now, and if this was to say fail in any kind of way, even if I break the grip, but Kevin's able to control his leg and push it across, he's now able to start sitting up with me, and I have a heck of a lot more variables to deal with now to try and finish it, and potentially trying to finish from the bottom, where I always want to try and stay on top if I'm already in a top position. Where I could do the same thing like a chamber lock, but I use my bottom leg here, because I'm not concerned about the control of his hips here. Because I have the internal rotation of his shoulder, he can't roll away to hitchhiker anyway. And like we talked about, I don't really stop his ability to bridge with this leg anyway. If he wants to bridge and move right now, this leg will always move with him. So it's more important that this leg is always on his face, and I'm going to use this leg to bring it over to break the grips, or use this to kick inside the biceps. So little tip for you guys there. The grip break, I'm just going to show you my favorite just for the heck of it. I'm going to bring this bottom leg over top of my opponent's grip, and I'm going to place my foot against the inside of my calf. What this is doing is creating a lot of pressure on his fingers and his wrists, and creating that pinch so that he's unable to track his hands with me as I pull. So his hands get locked in place, and now I start breaking the grip right from here. If I need to, I can lean a little bit to the side to further open his elbow up away from his body and break the grip. By having my foot right against the inside of my leg here, it makes it impossible for him to swing his arm back inside. What we don't want to do is something like this, where my leg's floating on top, and as I break that grip, he can now bring his arm up a bit higher, your right arm, yeah, and now bring it all the way through and get his arms grip back together, and then we're like almost at that arm bar position to finish, but he just got his arms clasped back together. If I bring my leg over and against the inside of my calf here, as I break this, if he tries to come back through that space, he can't. And so I either will now finish the arm lock, or he's going to frantically bring his arm over top and try and grip his arms together. And then I can either block it with the shin, or he starts to set up the triangle because of how he had to bring his arm over top, which now has a one arm in, one arm out. It's going to allow me to start looking at setting up the control of the triangle to either finish a triangle or use that control to isolate the shoulder and finish the arm lock. So I love this one here, always breaking the posture, leg over top, break the grip, take the arm away. Now, for taking the arm away and actually using braking mechanics, I have the Kimura control. So naturally, as soon as whether it's right before the grip's even broken, see how I can start causing a break in his structure here, which is going to make his grip weaker. As his grip breaks, I'm going to keep his wrist to the bottom side or the left side of his elbow. So I always want his wrist below the elbow if I'm looking at a straight line here. So from here, his wrist is in a straight line to his elbow, facing me. If he wants to, he's able to get his wrist above his elbow, and now he can start looking at externally rotating his shoulder and going with that hitchhiker. If I go here, this will always ensure internal rotation. If he tries to turn away from here, it's impossible. So what I'm looking at doing is always keeping that off at the angle where his wrist is below his shoulder and elbow, so that I'm going to be able to start turning my body this direction to bring it with me. I can flare him out a bit more like this Kimura, and I'm going to turn my hip slightly so I can internally rotate my hip to use my leg to curl here. If I'm turned a little bit outwards, or if I'm facing straight forward, then I have to break my own alignment, my own structure to try and curl him here. Where if I just turn my hip slightly to the left, I'm no longer using flexibility, I'm able to take my leg and curl into him here. From this position, I fall back, I curl into his head, and I bring my inside of my thigh down, closing my knee on top of his shoulder so that his shoulder is unable to absorb force. The main thing that we need to do is isolate the shoulder so that as I start applying this arm lock, look how his shoulder raises. The force bleeds out, and that's usually why we are unable to finish arm locks when we're in competition, is as soon as we're cranking this, not as much force is going into our opponent's shoulder as we'd like. Think about driving a nail through the shoulder, pinning it into the mat so it cannot move, so all the force will go into our opponent's elbow. Here, as the grip breaks, I turn, I break his posture, I close my knees, I bring the arm out. As I get out into this position, my forearm is hooked around his forearm, and I'm going to grab up by my chest. You could grab your gi if you'd like, but I'm closing my elbow here to keep his arm extended. This hand will migrate to the back of his hand here, so I'm getting a grip on his hand like this. I have a lot more ability to rotate his arm here with control of the hand than I would if I just had the wrist. Either could work though. I'm looking at turning his thumb down right towards me to internally rotate his shoulder as much as possible. Think about like wringing out a towel. The towel is super loose, but as we start winding it in the two different directions to wring out the water, it starts to get really tight. And that's what we're looking at doing. We're using the twist to create tension through the muscles and the ligaments and tendons so that it becomes super tight. And so from there, like if I could theoretically have a big enough lever, I could keep rotating Kevin's arm like this and make him tap. We're not going to have enough to do that, but if I can at least do that to take slack out of the joint, then that's fantastic. So this is the rotation element of this arm bar. Next, I keep his shoulder pinched and his posture broken, and I'm going to think about giving a slight push away with my legs and a pull up on his arm here. So I'm thinking about trying to pull his arm out of his shoulder socket, like a torture device stretching him. This is the other plane of direction that we're going to use to take slack out of the joint here. So by me being able to break his posture, isolate the shoulder, twist his arm up, and then start pulling it away, I could probably start to get a submission just off of that. And it actually feels quite nice when you're drilling it on each other because you're getting just a nice release of your shoulder and elbow. I haven't even started the traditional mechanics of the arm bar, which would be the pulling down into the hip and the bridging. You should never have to bridge when drilling the breaking mechanics of an arm bar or really any submission. If you can't do this against an opponent who is letting you with no resistance and you're using more than 10% effort, then you're doing something horribly wrong. No bridging while drilling, and never bridging while we are actually rolling live, because that's where the injuries are going to occur. If you have to bridge at any point to finish the submission, you're doing it wrong, and we're looking out for our partner's safety. The only thing to note now is that because we're using internal rotation of the shoulder, the elbow placement will change. And so if we try and just go completely straight back with it, the elbow is actually going to be angled off to the side here, and we're going to get the arm bending a bit here. So what we're actually going to be doing is tracking where this elbow goes, and we're going to be bringing it over our hip that's on the top side of his shoulder or on the leg that's controlling his head. So we turn this even more. So as I'm here, I've broken this grip, and I've brought it back. My hand migrates to the back of his hand here, so I can keep the thumb pointing down. So I'm ensuring that the hitchhiker is not a possibility. From here, breaking his posture, dropping this knee down into his shoulder, further rotating, causing internal rotation, pulling his arm away. He's already ready to tap, and now his elbow is actually pointing out this direction closer to the camera. So if I just pulled straight down, he might end up bending his arm back over my hip. So I'm going to bring it over the hip, just adjusting for the change of angle of the elbow. Nice tap. Here. So if we started from this position, I grab his thumb, point it down towards his leg, try and point it towards me. I pull up, I pinch, I close down on his shoulder. There, he taps just from me pushing down on the shoulder here because there's so much tension through his arm. From here, I lighten up slightly just so I can go through the motion, just down over my hip, gently. From here, this forearm, normally I would keep it here, keeping it super tight to my chest, so I can scrape up his forearms further, trying to stretch the muscles in his arm here to finish that. So super gentle with this, guys. You shouldn't have to use any effort to finish the proper braking mechanics of the arm bar. Contrary to popular belief, it is actually very difficult to break somebody's arm. You can cause pops in competition, but if it's not enough to actually devastate to the joint to the point where they can no longer use it, then it's not effectively applied. So I know there's a lot of information in this video. Go through the grip brake and go through the different braking mechanics of making sure you're isolating the shoulder, causing rotation in the shoulder to be able to start pulling slack out of the joint, then actually the pull itself to stretch the arm out further, and then look at making sure you're applying the force at the proper angle to track your opponent's elbow.